Here is a question for you. What if someone came to your church and said that activism to save rattlesnakes, yes, rattlesnakes, is true reform, but activism to save children from violent torture and murder is a dangerous trap of Satan? Does that sound too incredible to be true? You're about to find out. Matthew and Dennis Priebe have big problems, big problems. They both made public statements, and recently Pastor David Asscherick has also made public statements that completely contradict and refute Dennis and Matthew Priebe. So this is a big problem because they can't both be right. Either the Priebes are teaching a falsehood or Pastor David is a liar. They can't both be right. Who is telling the truth? So let's look at the evidence and you can decide for yourself. Recently, I saw several people share this video here by Matthew Priebe, provocatively titled Misdirection and Guile, Papacy and Evangelical, and this is promoted by his father, Dennis Priebe. Special alert, my son Matthew will be sharing his quote research. This is vital. Oh, it's vital information. So the father, Dennis Priebe, is promoting this video, but there are very serious problems. Recently, abortion has been in the news because the Supreme Court of the USA has accepted a case that many believe might overturn Roe versus Wade that legalized abortion in the USA. Pastor David Asscherick stated, "The prohibition of taking life is not a religious conviction. The preservation of life against its unlawful taking is what? What does that say? Is certainly the domain of earthly governments. Everyone knows this, thus police." Again here, murder, manslaughter, etc. are already illegal. The unlawful taking of another's life is already legislated. And here, again, in the context of abortion, again, the second tablet of the Decalogue is the what? Is the legitimate domain of earthly governments. Now, this is true. This is a biblical truth. But unfortunately, this causes huge problems for Dennis and Matthew Priebe because not only have they been teaching the exact opposite, but they have been notified multiple times that they have no evidence for their claims, yet despite this, they continue to publicly, keyword, publicly, they continue to publicly make false claims and slander Christians in other denominations. This is very wrong. Several years ago, both Dennis and what's the name right there? Say it with me. Matthew Priebe published their message, The Trojan Horse, and Dennis went around preaching this message, and there are multiple videos of him online doing so. Both Dennis and Matthew made the claim that evangelicals in the USA rose to power in the 1970s on the issue of abortion. They wanted to make the killing of children illegal. However, both Dennis and Matthew accused them of believing that, quote, morality can and should be a matter for political legislation. And make no mistake, the use of civil power by apostate Christianity is making what? What do the Priebes accuse them of? Of making coercion a substitute for conversion and will lead directly to the formation of the image to the beast. These are their words, and this is patently false because it's perfectly biblical and fair for the government to legislate against rape, robbery, and murder. Now, it's very noble to try to convert robbers and rapists. I myself was an armed robber who went to prison for robbery, but this does not mean that we should legalize robbery. Not only is that completely absurd, but you would be promoting anarchy. Again, the authors are Dennis and Matthew Priebe. These are their words printed in black and white. Dennis and Matthew then go on to champion the Adventist pioneers who got involved in politics by opposing evils in society like slavery, even defying immoral laws, and that they agitated for temperance. Adventist pioneers were loud champions promoting laws to make alcohol illegal. But wait a minute, let's take a minute and think this through. They just told us that coercion is not a substitute for conversion, but literally just a few sentences later, they say the exact opposite and champion coercion. How in the world is coercion for slavery and alcohol okay, but not for violently killing children? That is absurd. How in the world does it make any sense to promote legislation against alcohol and slavery, but then get upset and mad and slander people because they promote legislation against killing little boys and girls? The answer is that it makes no sense whatsoever unless you understand North American Adventist false teaching about abortion. Now, I have already made an entire video, I've made many videos right here refuting these falsehoods, and also another video refuting the claim that people who oppose killing children are racists. So I'm not going to repeat those details here, and you should also know that I have personally written, Andrew, have personally written many letters to the Priebes. They made their false claims publicly, so I'm free to respond publicly. But even so, I personally wrote several letters to them, providing multiple facts and references that their claims are in fact false. However, the problem has become worse because recently Matthew Priebe published this video, and I will play several clips so that you can hear these statements out of his own mouth. However, before doing so, he will accuse a group of people of constantly parroting talking points. The definition of the word to parrot is to repeat or imitate without what? Thought or understanding. So among the other things that he will say, he will publicly accuse a certain group of people of mindlessly repeating talking points like some dumb drones. Now, go ahead and try to guess, just try to guess what group of people he's talking about. The answer may surprise you. Let's listen.
We have also begun to copy evangelical ideas when it comes to politics and national agendas. Evangelicals developed into a political force in the 1970s and opposed many of the same things that Adventists oppose. Since we were beginning to copy theological concepts from them, why not join them in their crusade to reform America? This has been especially true in the last 20 years or so. Now SDAs are constantly parroting evangelical talking points when it comes to political candidates and issues, even when the issues involved have nothing to do with biblical truths.
There you go. Did you hear that? Out of his own mouth. As they stated previously, both Dennis and Matthew Priebe said that evangelicals rose to power in the 1970s because of their opposition to killing children. And Matthew Priebe has the audacity to publicly accuse Adventists of acting like dumb drones who are mindlessly parroting evangelical talking points. Now, aside from the fact that this insulting language is itself not an argument, this presents serious problems. For example, when Pastor David Asscherick says that the government has the right to legislate the Sixth Commandment, does that mean that he also is a dumb robot repeating evangelical talking points thoughtlessly? The Priebes are so bold to criticize and attack what they say are false teachings of evangelicals and Catholics, but when well-known influential pastors within their own church literally publicly teach the exact same thing, suddenly the Priebes aren't so bold anymore. You notice that? Why is that? If this teaching is so evil and so dangerous, then why doesn't anyone have the bravery and the bravado to challenge David Asscherick? And what about our historic champions of religious liberty like A.T. Jones, who taught the exact same arguments, just another dumb drone repeating evangelical talking points? And what about our Adventist pioneers, the pioneers who publicly condemned abortion as child murder and infanticide, who publicly said that abortion should be made infamous and criminal, and who publicly supported anti-abortion legislation promoted by the American Medical Association? Were our Adventist pioneers also mindless, gullible, unthinking simpletons? Pay very close attention and notice that the Priebes, like others, are so quick and so loud to champion the pioneers on slavery and temperance. Oh, look at what they did. But when it comes to abortion, they completely ignore this history. We have seen this over and over and over again. They do this repeatedly. Adventist church leaders and evangelists, they will hide or ignore this history because they know that if they have to talk about it, it will influence you and change your mind. They know that if they talk about this history, then they will have to explain why the pioneers had the completely opposite teaching that we hear today within our own church. They know that if they talk about it, it will become a huge source of humiliation and embarrassment, because admitting that the pioneers were right would reveal the falsehood for what it is. It would also point out that the evangelicals are right as well, and it would cause everyone to see that we've been lied to continually for over 50 years. And something that should make people so upset is that even when you write letters, as I have, I've written over 1,200 letters, not including even when you you send emails and call these people or even talk to them personally, face to face, as I have many, many, many times, even when you contact these people and bring this to their attention and give them clear, factual, historically documented knowledge and facts, they still won't say anything. This is not an accident. Do not for a minute, don't even for a second, assume that these people are stupid. They are very smart. These are not dumb people. They're very intelligent. They know every detail of the history of temperance and slavery, but they deliberately and willfully ignore the history on abortion. Also notice in the video, he claims that the sixth commandment is not, he says, it is not a biblical truth. I will replay the video clip and listen carefully to when he says, when the issues involved here have nothing to do with biblical truths. Let's listen.
This has been especially true in the last 20 years or so. Now SDAs are constantly parroting evangelical talking points when it comes to political candidates and issues, even when the issues involved have nothing to do with biblical truths.
Again, out of his own mouth, the Priebes claim and admit that the killing of children is one of the most important, if not the most important, pressing top priority issue for evangelicals, but then he claims that this has nothing to do with biblical truths. Fact, both science and the scriptures fully affirm the humanity of the unborn child. Fact, the sixth commandment applies to children. Fact, the Adventist Church itself right here publicly and officially affirms this truth right here in black and white. Fact, the purpose of the church on this earth is to tell the truth. That's why we exist, to tell the truth, which is exactly what the church has not been doing for over 50 years. Fact, the followers of Christ will keep the commandments. Fact, God will have a people that keep the commandments. Fact, fact, fact. These are all incontrovertible, irrefutable facts. The claim that brutally and violently murdering children is not a biblical truth is a lie, and the very best evidence to prove this point is from Matthew Priebe's own words. You see, Matthew loves to preach about the importance of protecting and caring for animals, and he wrote an entire book here titled Animals, Ethics, and Christianity. And in the book, he presents many graphic and sad examples of cruelty and abuse, and one example, he talks about the need to speak up for rattlesnakes. No, I am not joking. This is not a joke. Rattlesnakes, and much of this is posted for free in an article at his father's website right here. Let's read. The brutality and bloodshed that occurred. Rattlesnake roundups are almost too gruesome to describe. Gasoline is poured into rattlesnake dens and burrows to force them out. Many never recover from being so poisoned, and many animals that share those burrows, such as the gopher tortoise, are also poisoned as well as having their homes ruined. Every conceivable torture is inflicted on the poor rattlesnakes. He's not talking about children. These are rattlesnakes, ripped from their wild homes. No protection or mercy of any kind is allowed for an animal so vilified by society. They are burned, beheaded, crushed, blinded, stabbed, maimed, beaten, skinned, and eventually eaten in a carnival-type atmosphere. And they feel and suffer as much as every other animal would in the same situation. He goes on to say there is good news in these areas, as much progress has been made in eliminating cruelty towards captive animals. Animal racing has become far less popular, and illegal animal fighting has been aggressively prosecuted and is harder to hide. And even rattlesnake roundups are dwindling. All of these victories are possible because caring people have stopped supporting cruelty and are showing what is conceivable when we take a stand for compassion. So do you see the problem? Matthew Priebe praises the work of aggressively outlawing and prosecuting people for animal abuse, but when people want to outlaw and prosecute an abortion industry for killing millions of innocent children, oh, they are evil, dangerous, insidious enemies of the gospel. Saving children made in the very image of God, that is bad, but speaking up for rattlesnakes, that is good, that's a victory. But wait, it gets worse. Secretive rogue agency Wildlife Services kills millions of animals a year, solely to benefit ranchers. This killing is paid for by U.S. tax dollars. And how do they kill them? With traps and poisons that kill anything indiscriminately. So Matthew Priebe has a problem when tax dollars are used to kill animals, but when tax dollars are used to kill little boys and girls, then that's the realm of apostate evangelicals. Read the next sentence. They corner babies in their dens and gas or burn them to death. Babies. He's so concerned about animal babies. The purpose of this book is to show that protecting animals is what is true reform. When evangelicals want to protect little boys and girls from a brutal, violent death, they are enemies of the gospel. But protecting rattlesnakes, oh, that's true reform. Over 1 million snakes alone are killed every year just so that expensive boots and purses can fulfill fashion's whims. The World Health Organization and Guttmacher Institute say that upward of 40 to 50 million children are brutally killed every year by abortion. But those snakes, speak up for those snakes. Thanks to the efforts of dedicated activists, rogue Japanese pirates are slaughtering fewer whales. Oh, wow! Activism to protect whales is good, but not activism to save children from slaughter. No, according to him, that will ruin our prophetic message. Check this out. Matthew knows that people might not be so eager to support animal rights activism, so he responds to the objection, we should not be involved in activist causes. Matthew's answer, this is a common attempt to stop social progress in religious institutions. Any Christian who opposed the evils of society were told by their fellow church members to avoid activist causes that distracted from the gospel. I can't believe I'm reading this. So this is nothing new. I find it what? Matthew finds it magnificent that many, if not most, of the pioneers of the Adventist church defied the naysayers and stood for the truth. Was this activism on the part of SDA's founders? Of course it was. Oh man, this is hard. It was a vital and important aspect of their religious devotion. There is nothing wrong with activism for truth. Do you see what he just did? When the pioneers were activists for slavery and temperance, he defends them because he wants to use them as an example to justify helping the rattlesnakes. But when evangelicals engage in activism to save little children, they are doing a satanic work, even though the Adventist pioneers did the exact same thing. And Matthew Priebe completely ignores that history. Listen, every single person watching this video who is a friend or supporter of the Priebes, you need to please contact them and ask why. Why are they ignoring this history? Why are they so afraid? If the pioneers were right, then what's the problem? But if the pioneers were wrong, why not give an explanation? It'd be so easy to do. Why are they ignoring them? When Jesus was challenged by the Pharisees, he asked them the question, was John's baptism from heaven or from men? But the Pharisees said to each other, well, if we answer this way, then we are in trouble. But if we answer the other way, we're also in trouble. So they said, oh, we don't know. And Adventists today, especially in North America, like the Priebes, they do the exact same thing. Don't talk about the pioneers opposing abortion because it's going to cause so many problems. So just ignore them. Speaking of animal abuse, he says, to say it is not our problem is to shirk our God-given duty. My friends, it doesn't matter whether you like Matthew Priebe or not. It doesn't matter if you're an Adventist or not. This is insane. How do you even describe this? How do you describe someone who cares so much and speaks so loudly in defense of snakes while they slander those who are trying to save children? He says that if we don't use toothpaste tested on animals, this can help save countless lives. Toothpaste. Anyways, there's definitely a lot more that we can say on this issue, but we have to keep moving on. Throughout the video, Matthew Priebe repeatedly uses more insulting language, false exaggeration, and strawman fallacies. For example, he says, quote, in the last 20 years or so, SDAs are constantly parroting evangelical talking points when it comes to political candidates and issues, even when the issues involved have nothing to do with biblical truths. We've already looked at this quote. Let's continue. This could be seen as foolish. Now, stop for a minute right there. Matthew Priebe says that this could be foolish, But says who? Why is it foolish? Again, no explanation given. Continue. But innocuous. So what if we spout? Oh, we are spouting evangelical ideas about U.S. involvement in Iran or immigration policy. It doesn't hurt anything, right? Wrong. Satan is counting on us being indifferent in this area because he, Satan, is using this as a way of conditioning our minds to accept misdirection. Several different times he uses denigrating language and says that Adventists are parroting, they are mimicking, and here they are just spouting evangelical ideas as if we are just dumb, mindless automatons who just reflect like a mirror whatever evangelicals are saying. Here's a really great example. He literally says, quote, "Every time I hear an Adventist attack on socialism or climate reform, I hear Pat Robertson's or James Dobson's voice echoing in the background."
Every time I hear an Adventist attack on socialism or climate reform, I hear Pat Robertson's or James Dobson's voice echoing in the background.
Now, take a moment to just imagine that. Imagine if an evangelical leader stood up and said, "Whenever church members talk about caves, I hear Doug Batchelor's voice in the background. Every time I hear church members talk about skateboards, I can just hear David Asscherick's voice. Whenever I hear anyone in church talk about emotional intelligence, I can just hear Dr. Neil Nedley's voice." This is absurd. Just because Adventist church members happen to agree on a political or culinary or meteorological or civil or any issue is not in itself problematic. And to prove the point, even if we agree on theological issues, that is not automatically a problem. For example, Adventists and Catholics and Evangelicals, we all agree on the virgin birth of Jesus and his bodily resurrection. Should we abandon these beliefs simply because we share this in common with Catholics and Evangelicals? Should we abandon the Sabbath because those Seventh-day Baptists also honor the fourth commandment? Jehovah's Witnesses share with us the same belief about the state of the dead, soul sleep. Should we abandon that too? The very fact that we openly share similar beliefs with those of other faiths is itself not a problem unless it contradicts the Bible, and those are specifically theological beliefs, not social, not civil, not educational, recreational, or occupational issues. Matthew Priebe's attempted guilt by association does not work. He's trying very hard to conflate political issues with theological beliefs and then claim that this automatically causes a problem, and he literally says this. Let's listen.
Satan is counting on us being indifferent in this area because he is using this as a way of conditioning our minds to accept misdirection. In what way is Satan using our evangelical alliance to lead us astray? There are two ways I will address specifically. Number one, by listening to the evangelicals, we automatically do not see them as the prophetic agents of America's destruction.
Did you notice what he said? Satan is using our evangelical alliance to lead us astray. There are two ways I will address specifically. Number one, by listening to the evangelicals, we automatically, he said, we automatically do not see them as the prophetic agents of America's destruction.
By listening to the evangelicals, we automatically do not see them as the prophetic agents of America's destruction.
This is so false and misleading. Number one, we don't have an alliance with evangelicals. That is a total fabrication, and even if we do so on an appropriate issue, there's nothing wrong with that. A fact which he himself is forced to admit with the history of temperance. When Ellen White spoke at the 9th Annual Health and Temperance Association in Oakland, California, she said that the movement to outlaw alcohol is the very work that must go with its three angels' messages. Whenever you can get an opportunity to do what? To unite with the temperance people, do so. And check this out. How are we going to undeceive them unless by associating with them? You say they are going to carry the question right along with the Sunday movement. How are you going to help them on that point? How are you going to let your light shine to the world without what? Without uniting with them in this temperance question. These people were openly advocating and petitioning for Sunday legislation, and rather than scare Adventists away with boogeyman fear porn, she told them to get close to them and unite with them. You can do it. You have ideas they have never thought of, and this places you where? On vantage ground. Matthew Priebe, however, comes along and says the complete opposite. No, if you agree with them on alcohol, then you automatically won't see them as the prophetic agents of America's destruction. There's an idiom or phrase in the English language that says to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. In addition to the condescending descriptors that we are just parroting or mimicking, spouting off evangelical talking points, his comments also assume that we can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, that Adventists are so low IQ and deficient in brain power that we couldn't possibly discern the difference between the Sunday law and immigration policy. It assumes that if we agree with our evangelical neighbors on abortion, then somehow we automatically and magically accept their entire system of beliefs. And to prove that this is not true, I'm going to quote from an expert. I'm going to appeal to an expert in this matter, and guess who it is? That's right, the defender of rattlesnakes himself, who writes, quote, "We must oppose what is wrong in society without becoming enmeshed in the errors of theology that the secular world may believe. Praise the Lord. Say it with me. Praise the Lord." That is true. That is spot on. Right here, he is completely correct. But of course, you all see the problem. When Matthew wants to defend rattlesnakes, he wants to make it very clear that it's true reform, that it's a God-given duty, that it's the true exercise of the dominion principle. He wants to make it clear that it's perfectly okay to oppose wrongs in society without compromising our beliefs, that we can, in fact, chew bubblegum and walk at the same time, unless, of course, it brings us into alignment with those dreaded Christians who oppose violently killing little boys and girls. If we find ourselves in alignment with animal rights activists to defend snakes, that's perfectly okay. But if we agree with people like the Adventist pioneers who wanted to outlaw the killing of children, then suddenly that's a big problem. And does anyone know what is the definition for guile? Matthew Priebe accuses the evangelicals of guile. Do you know what that word means? From the dictionaries: deceitful cunning, duplicity, insidious cunning in attaining a goal, dishonest behavior that you use to deceive someone. Now, this is, again, a very serious accusation, but unfortunately, this is so unfortunate. As we've come to expect in a very disappointing and depressing way, he does not provide even one shred of evidence, and notice the terrible irony. Matthew Priebe's very own Seventh-day Adventist Church is on documented record, published in our own official church journals, of engaging in guile and misdirection to lead Adventists to accept abortion. It is a documented, historical, irrefutable fact that Adventist leadership deliberately misled their own church and the public on abortion. That is a fact. But notice, when Adventists do this, he gives them a complete pass. Dennis Priebe gives them a complete pass. Everybody gives the church a complete pass. When Adventists do this, and we have the facts, and when we have the evidence, both he and his father and everyone else will say nothing, but instead they attack evangelicals without any facts and without any evidence. And the further irony is that if you listen to him carefully, he tacitly admits that the evangelicals are in fact correct. Notice, he doesn't even spend even 1 second citing from any of their material and saying why it's false. It's just false or wrong because he says it is. There are two basic ways that people think: the lower limbic part of the brain that processes emotions and fear, and the cortex that deals with functions like thinking, reason, memory. When Adventists talk about the Sabbath, the state of the dead, sanctuary, etc., they appeal to the cortex. They want you to carefully think and reason and study. But on abortion, because we cannot defend our false teachings, we instead appeal to the limbic system. It's always fear, 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 fear. Yes, the evangelicals are right about some things, but if you listen to them, you are automatically going to be deceived and are in great danger because you can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. If you listen to them now on abortion, you will accept Sunday law later. In addition, addition to insulting his own fellow church members as mindless drones, this is just pure speculation. There are no facts, no reason, no logic, just an appeal to fear, creating a limbic stress response and hypertension. Again, just fear porn and speculation. But Matthew Priebe himself says, quote, "Speculation has no place in the three angels' messages."
Speculation has no place in the three angels' messages.
Okay, and finally, while there is certainly more that can be said, let's finish with the best quote. Matthew Priebe is so eager to persuade Adventists to actively support protecting animals that he writes an entire chapter titled "The Principles of Taking Life." He addresses the idea of killing an animal for the purpose of self-defense, wherein he states, quote, "To deliberately kill an innocent human who has committed no attack is murder. Likewise, we never," he underlines the word never, "we never have biblical permission to kill a predator animal that has not first attacked people or our pets. The killing of innocent predators is not self-defense, but instead of whose way? Of Satan's way." Matthew Priebe, out of his own mouth, says that you cannot kill even dangerous animals like bears, cougars, or snakes unless they first attack you. An idea that not many people are going to quickly agree with. But because he really wants you to believe this, he tries to link it using the word likewise to the obvious prohibition to deliberately kill an innocent human, which by his own admission, out of his own mouth, is murder, and in doing so proves that the effort and activism to outlaw abortion is in fact right and correct. He proves with his own words that evangelicals are correct, and in doing so undermines all of his slander. By admitting that killing an innocent human is murder, he reveals yet again, we have seen this over and over and over and over, we have seen this repeatedly. He proves yet again that he does not believe that the government has the authority and duty to legislate the sixth commandment. Adventists, especially in North America, and especially the, quote, conservative Adventists, like to tell everyone, oh yeah, the unborn are human, and oh yes, oh this is so terrible, abortion is murder, but they deny that the government has the right to legislate against murder. This is the reason why they will attack the evangelicals for defending children and then write an entire book telling you to use animal-friendly toothpaste and defend rattlesnakes. This is, of course, crazy and insane, and Dennis Priebe endorses this as vital information. Are you serious? This is completely absurd, but it is the logical conclusion of people who adopt the irrational, unscientific, unbiblical, indefensible belief that little children have no right to life. Anyways, that's enough for this video. I have covered all of the major points. Thank you for watching.